Hello guys. So, welcome to the second lecture on central forces. As you remember, in the last class we defined the central force, and remember central force is a force which points to a fixed point in the space, and then we also made a additional restriction that we will be looking at only the conservative central forces. Okay. Then we wrote down the Lagrangian and equations of motion, and then we discussed the constants of motion. Remember, it is conservative, so energy happens to be one of the main constants of motion, and in this case it turns out that the angular momentum is also a constant of motion. And then I wrote down what is called as a formal solution. That means I can formally write it in an integral form, the r of t and theta of t, and in principle if I can perform that integral, then I have a complete solution, which is r as a function of t and theta as a function of time t. Okay. In today's class, what we are going to do is I am going to talk about, see, whenever we talk about central forces, the things that come to our mind are the planetary motion and the orbital electrons in atoms. And typically when we think about those, all we talk about are the orbits. So, in today's class what I am going to do is to talk about orbits and how to obtain orbits before you actually do calculations. Okay. So, just by looking at the form of the potential, I should be able to tell you what the orbit would look like, okay, or at least give you some broad features of the orbit. So, that kind of classification we want to do, and to do that it is helpful to describe the whole central motion as an equivalent one dimensional motion. I will come to that in a moment, but use that idea of equivalent one dimensional motion to describe the orbits here, and then we will do some small classification of these orbits. Okay. Now, what I mean by equivalent one dimensional problem is you start with, so we have already done this. Energy is one constant of motion, angular momentum is another constant of motion. Angular momentum is a vector quantity. That means the motion, so we argued this in a last class, that the motion of the particle will remain planar. So, it is restricted to one plane, and then we said that if it is restricted to a plane, what we can do is we can choose our xy plane that is same as the motion of the particle, plane of the motion of the particle. So, basically the problem reduces to 2 degrees of freedom, and we will use the plane polar coordinates, that is r and theta. I will write down the Lagrangian. The Lagrangian, again this is a problem of 2 coordinates or 2 degrees of freedom. So, Lagrangian is written in terms of r dot, theta dot, and if you remember, the Lagrangian is m r dot square plus r square theta dot square, that is the kinetic energy term, and then you have this potential energy term there. Okay. But then remember, theta is a cyclic coordinate. So, corresponding that actually relates to angular momentum being constant. So, in this case the z component of the angular momentum, and that is the only component angular momentum has, is constant. So, theta dot is actually L by m r square. So, L is a constant of motion, m is the mass, and theta dot is related to r. Now, what I can do is I can actually construct, because in this Lagrangian there is no theta anywhere, there only appears theta dot, but remember theta dot itself is a function of r now. So, I can put that back into this, and then what I would get is half m r dot square, that term is here, and the second term when I substitute theta dot is equal to L by m r square will turn out to be L square by 2 m r square. Now, what I am going to do is take that kinetic energy term theta term, which now becomes this angular momentum term, and put it along with the potential term. Okay. So, I will write this as m r dot square minus V r minus L square by 2 m r square, and look at this quantity in the bracket. It is just a function of r again. V is a function of r, and the second term is just L square by 2 m r square. So, this is a function of r. I will call it as a new function called as effective potential. So, this is the effective potential of r. But then look at this Lagrangian. This Lagrangian looks like exactly a Lagrangian of a particle moving in one dimension, and if it was moving along x axis, the Lagrangian would be half mx dot square minus some potential of x, and that is exactly what this looks like. So, effectively this problem reduces to a problem of a particle having 1 degree of freedom. Okay. And then of course, I will call this Lagrangian as a function of only r dot. So, I can now only solve the problem using this Lagrangian for 1 degree of freedom, that is r, and then combine it with theta by integrating this one here to get theta. So, this is theta dot is L by m r square. So, if I integrate, I get theta. So, this is how we will try and solve this, and this potential here is called as a effective potential, and we will throughout the central forces I will keep talking in terms of the effective potential there. Now, if I calculate force from here, remember force is nothing but minus derivative of V effective with respect to r. So, that would be our effective force. Remember, that is not exactly same as the central force, but that is the effective force. If I calculate that by taking derivative of effective potential with respect to r, the first term will be minus dV by dr, but that is nothing but the central force, and the derivative of the second term is L square by m r cube. Can you recognize this term? Oh, this term is exactly same as the centrifugal term. This is what you would have done, or in 12th standard you would have treated this problem in the rotating frame, and in the rotating frame you typically add this centrifugal term. So, you can see that centrifugal, and you can actually if you substitute L is equal to m r square theta dot, that simply becomes m r theta dot square, or m r omega square as we comfortably call it. So, this is the effective force. So, basically effective force is nothing but central force plus the centrifugal term. Okay. Here are some examples of effective potential. So, first one I will calculate for inverse square potential. Remember, inverse square potentials always have special space or special place in the theory of central forces. So, here the potential is of the form 1 over r, okay, and that potential I have drawn here using this orange line. Okay. So, orange line shows the 1 over r potential, and because it is attractive, there is a minus sign. So, it is minus 1 over r, okay, that is what we are. And the in V effective, the second term L square by m r square, that I have plotted here using the green line. So, now what we have is sum of these two will be our potential there, V effective potential there, and you can see I can easily explain this. Remember, this goes as 1 over r, this goes as 1 over r square, the green curve. Once it goes as 1 over r square, what happens when r goes to 0? When r goes to 0, that is when r is less than 1, r square will rise much faster than 1 over r square will rise much faster than 1 over r, and that is why when you take the sum of these two, what we have is a potential which goes to positive infinity as r goes to 0. What happens afterwards? Somewhere of course, these two potentials will be same, it crosses 0, and at infinity both these potentials, that is the centrifugal part and the 1 over r part, they both go to 0. Okay. So, the sum of these two also must go to 0, leaving you with one minimum in the potential. So, you have effective potential which goes all the way up, then there is one minimum and then it goes to 0. Okay. This is the form of V effective for attractive square potential, attractive inverse square potential. What would happen if I have repulsive inverse square potential? Now, that is when of course, both the curves are, one is 1 over r square, the other one is 1 over r. Okay. So, when you add them, you simply get this curve which is sum of the two. Okay. Remember here too, 1 over r square term dominates near 0 and 1 over r term dominates near r is equal to infinity. So, that you have to remember. Here is one more example. This is attractive, but inverse cube. Okay. That means, the force goes as 1 over r cube with a minus sign. So, if this one here goes as 1 over x cube, if this goes as 1 over x cube, then what will happen is this term dominates over the 1 over r square term, and the effective potential goes all the way to negative infinity. It would be exactly opposite of this, and then somewhere the sum will be 0, you get maximum, and then the potential goes to 0 as r goes to infinity. So, this is one more possibility there. And here is one more example. This is our standard Hooke's law or harmonic oscillator. The potential goes as half r square. So, it is increasing as r goes to infinity, and you have this centrifugal potential term here. Okay. And when you take the sum of these two, you get something like this. So, this is your harmonic effective potential for harmonic oscillator. This also has one minimum. I have of course taken examples where the potentials for the central forces, they are monotonic, either they are increasing or they are decreasing here. Okay. Of course, this is not necessarily the only form of potential, they could be more complex, but all that I really need to worry about is when I want to describe orbits, the crucial question would come is, do I have a minimum? Okay. Now, this potential has one minimum, this potential has one minimum, this has one maximum, this does not have any. But these are not the only possibilities, you could have more than one minimum and one maximum. And in that case, I will still be talking about orbits, but close to such points here, where if there is a local minimum, then I might be able to describe the orbits near the local minimum there. Okay. So, this is the and once we have this potential graph, the good thing about one dimensional motion is the moment you have a potential graph, you can very easily guess the nature of the motion of the particle. So, here of course, we will be talking about motion in one dimension, that is motion in r alone, but later on I need to put it together with theta to get the complete motion. Okay. So, here is something that we must think about before I go further. When I am talking about the motion or orbits, for complete solution I need to have 4 constants, and typically in a Lagrangian formal setting, the best initial conditions to choose are the starting point, here it will be r naught and theta naught, and initial velocities, that would be the first time derivative of r naught and theta naught, or velocities at t is equal to 0 say. So, you have a particle there, you have kept that particle at some point. So, that is distance r naught, and the position vector makes an angle theta naught with respect to x axis. And then to set this into a motion, what I need to do is to give a tangential velocity and a radial velocity. Those are basically that r naught dot gives you radial velocity, and r naught multiplied by theta naught gives you the tangential velocity. Say for in this example, I give this particle some outward radial velocity and a tangential velocity which is in this direction. And if I set this in motion, the particle would perform some motion in space, and here for just as an example, I have taken this elliptic orbit, okay, and it would be moving like this. Now, question is typically what we would do is, I do not want to use these r dot and theta dot as my initial conditions. It is much better to use the constants of motions which we have already discussed, that is E and L. So, the question is, if I give you 4 constants, that is r naught, theta naught, now energy and angular momentum, will that give me the orbit? Yes, because if I give you E and L, can I find out r naught dot and theta naught dot? Yes, that we can immediately find out, because I know r naught dot will be equal to 2 by m v minus v effective, but calculated at r naught, remember. And I also know theta dot, because it is L divided by m r square always, but I want it at one point, and once I know these two values, the 4 constants are there, the orbit is fixed, the motion is fixed. Okay. It is Newtonian mechanics being deterministic once you set these conditions. So, here onwards what I am going to do is use these 4 constants r naught, theta dot theta naught, which we do not normally talk about, but energy and the angular momentum there to describe the orbits or describe the motion. Now, let us look at what happens to the angular motion. Before I go to the radial part, look what will happen here. Now, your theta dot is L by m r square. Okay. So, this is at one instant of time, but at all times theta will be equal to L by m r square theta dot. So, this is always true. That means, as the motion passes by, theta dot is related to r. If r increases, that means particle goes away from the origin, the angular speed reduces. If it comes closer to origin, angular speed increases. But what you must notice is theta dot is actually the sign of theta dot does not change during the motion, because here L is a constant of motion, m is a constant of motion, and r is always positive, and anyway it is squared. So, the on the right hand side the only variable is r, and that is always positive. So, whatever sign that this one has, and where will that sign come from? That will come from the angular momentum. Remember, your L vector points towards the positive z axis, then your theta dot is positive. That means, the orbit is counterclockwise, theta is always increasing. Or if the angular momentum is pointing towards the negative z axis, then L, the magnitude here L will be algebraically negative, theta dot will be negative, theta basically decreases. So, what will happen is, as this particle moves along some arbitrary trajectory like this, for this trajectory, what must happen is as it moves along the trajectory, the angle keeps on increasing. So, it is right now here, then after some time whatever it does in the it may come closer to origin or go further away, but what must happen is theta always is increasing, because this now trajectory we have chosen in such a way that it is counterclockwise and that. So, whatever happens after that the trajectory, the theta must go on increasing. What cannot happen is there are no turning points in theta. If there are no turning points in theta, what I mean is, look at a particle whose trajectory is something like this, and if you look at this trajectory, you have initial angle theta here, and as it moves, see what happens, the angle is increasing, then at certain angle the trajectory is gone like that, but what happens to theta values? Theta values go up to this max theta, and then theta value starts decreasing. That means theta dot must change its sign, but that is not possible because of this equation here, because of this equation here. Okay. So, this is one piece of information that we already have. The trajectories are such, so that either theta keeps on increasing or theta keeps on decreasing. It is monotonic function of time t. Okay. Now, I will go and look at what happens to the radial motion. Now, let me consider one case here. Okay. This is the harmonic oscillator potential. So, you have this 1 over r square term, and the orange curve is r square term. Okay. Now, remember, I have these two constants of motion L and E. The moment I fix L, because L explicitly appears in V effective, the shape of the potential is already fixed. So, given L, I have a particular shape. Now, if I choose energy, that suppose energy value is chosen as this, then what happens? Now, energy minus V effective, this at any r, energy minus V effective is actually proportional to half m r dot square, that is the radial kinetic energy. But half m r dot square is always positive, that means E minus V effective must always remain positive, and if that is the case, if I have chosen E as a constant here, you see outside R2 E minus V effective will be negative, because V effective now is larger than E, and same thing will happen here on the other side of R1, to the left of R1, E again is smaller than V effective. What does that mean? The particle actually cannot go there. This is called as a classically forbidden region, because in this region E minus V effective. So, when you are starting a motion for a particle from any point, say you have chosen L and E. Once you have chosen L and E, then after that the R motion is fixed. It cannot go below R1, it cannot go above R2. And what will happen to this motion? I mean, this is of course, these are consequences that we have studied way back in our 12th standard, that for a, forget about it being a V effective, for any potential curve, energy must be larger than the potential curve, because the remaining part is kinetic energy, and kinetic energy is always positive. So, that is how you get this classically allowed region between R1 and R2. So, this is what will happen. The particle's orbit must be such that r coordinate remains between R1 and R2. And then if you look at this potential here, and if this is the energy, it is a conservative system. So, if I start a motion here, what can happen to this? There are 2 points here, r dot becomes 0, because E minus V effective has become 0, and here also r dot becomes 0. So, basically particle starts somewhere in the middle, say it will go with a positive velocity, it will go all the way up to this turning point, turn back, go there, and it will keep doing this back and forth motion. And at the turning points, r dot is 0, that is radial velocity is 0. So, during this part when it is travelling towards this, it is going away from the origin, and then it goes to a limit r2, turns back, comes back, goes to r1, comes closer to origin up to r1, then turns back, goes r. So, this is what it will keep doing. If I want to plot this motion as a function of time t, it would look like this. If I have time variable here and if I plot r variable here, I will mark this as r1 and this as r2, and if I plot this graph, so this is r1, this is r2, the motion is going to be like this. Okay. In between, of course, it will speed up, it will slow down as it comes towards the turning point and back. So, the motion will be something like back and forth between r1 and r2, and that is very easy to see from one dimensional for one dimensional systems. Here is the second possibility. If I take this repulsive potential, in case of repulsive potential, here once I choose L, my V effective is fixed. Now, I choose energy E. What will happen in this case? In this case, the particle, suppose I start motion from some point here and I set initial speed in this direction. What will happen to this? It comes, of course, this initial speed of course is not arbitrary, we know, because if this is your starting point, this r dot squared times half m must be exactly equal to E minus V effective. So, you started this and you send it towards the origin. What would happen to this? This would come all the way up to this point where there is again a turning point, because to the left of r1 E will be smaller than V effective. So, this particle cannot go there. So, there is a turning point here. Once it turns, what happens? R dot becomes positive, after that R dot remains positive, it will go all the way to the infinity, there is no stopping. So, in this case the trajectory would look like this, plot as a function of time t, then you have something like this, and you have minimum of r1, and the particle comes as a function of t, particle comes from there, goes there, and it will keep on going all the way to the infinity. So, this is the motion that would happen if you have a curve like this. Okay. There is no second turning point. So, the particle goes all the way to the infinity, and because particle goes all the way, it does not matter where you start this motion from, eventually the particle will go to infinity, and that is why they are called as unbounded orbits, because the particle flies off to infinity, the curve extends all the way to infinity, as opposed to this one here, these will be called as bounded orbits, because particle always remains between these two limits r1 and r2. Okay. Now, what I want to do is we want to combine this. We want to combine this. So, we have thought about radial angular motion, we have thought about radial motion. Now, we want to combine this. What happens? Let me take this example here. In this example, I know that particle actually travels between these 2 points. So, it starts say from r1, will go to r2, back to r1. So, it keeps doing this. This would be periodic motion. Okay. And once you have this periodic motion, that means in terms of trajectory, this is r1. So, I will draw a circle here of radius r1. Okay. That is the distance from origin is r1. So, can the particle go inside this circle? No, because remember r1 r cannot be smaller than r1. Can it go outside this circle of radius r2. No, that also it cannot do, because the particle coordinate r must remain less than r2. So, your particle's motion is restricted to this annular ring, okay. And remember what it is doing is it is actually fluctuating between r1 and r2, but as it fluctuates between r1 and r2, what is happening to theta variable? Or remember, theta is also either increasing or decreasing. So, for the argument's sake, let us say that it is increasing, and if it is increasing, then how would the motion look like? As this particle travels towards r2, its angle theta also will be changing, and that is how you would get a trajectory like this, that it goes from r1 to r2, but by that time the angle has changed so much, and then it goes back to r1, but during that period also the angle changes, okay. And it keeps on doing this. And then we will also show that in fact, if you take this point and draw a line all the way up to origin, the trajectory that you got on the left on one side of that line and trajectory on the other side, they actually are symmetric about that line, okay. This is the result I will show in the next class. So, this is how an orbit will look like. R goes between r1 and r2, and at the same time theta is changing, but how much does theta change, that we do not know, that we need to do the calculation. Once I do that calculation, I will be able to map correctly the trajectories of this particle. So, here are some possible examples. These are the kind of this of course will continue like this, but these are not the only possibilities. Let me show you some examples there. Here, look at the first one. So, the motion has started at r1 when the distance from the origin was minimum, and as it goes towards r2, the angle theta has changed exactly by pi. So, at the on the x axis it also attains the maximum distance, and then from that point onwards in further another pi rotation it has come back to r1. That is how you actually get closed orbits. So, by the time this particle does one oscillation between r1 and r2, that is going from r1 to r2 and come back to r1, theta has exactly changed by 2 pi. That is when you can get a closed orbit, but that is not the only thing. Basically here the orbit may not be closed, you could actually go on doing this. So, periodically the r1 goes to r2 and comes back to r1, during that time theta changes, and that keeps on happening, and here the orbit may not close, the orbit might actually be something like this, you know, it will go on doing this every time it shifts the turning point. So, here there was a turning point here, and that turning point has shifted here. So, the same thing will happen in the next iteration also, turning point will keep on shifting, okay. And you can think in terms of the angular the oscillation angular frequency for theta and oscillation angular frequency for r. Remember, theta is also oscillating between 0 and 2 pi. So, it goes to 2 pi, then goes to 2 pi to 4 pi and so on, and same thing happens to r. R is also an oscillatory motion. Here is one more example. Here the trajectory, it is opposite of this. So, by the time the trajectory starts from r1 and goes to the maximum point, theta has changed by 2 pi. So, the orbit now looks like this. Then now it will start going back to r1, okay. It is the distance from the origin starts decreasing, and by the time it finishes another angular rotation of 2 pi, it comes back to r1. So, of course, I have shown this as a closed orbit, but again this may not be the feature. It might between r1 and r2, here it went from r1 to r2 in angle less than 2 pi. Here it went from r1 to r2 in angle pi. Here it went from angle r1 to r2 in 2 pi. So, basically it is all about how much time theta takes to rotate and how much time r1 takes to oscillate between r1 and r2 limits. Here is one more trajectory. This trajectory, how will you get this one? So, I will go back to the diagrams of V effective, and there is one special case there. Sorry. Here this one, for this potential what happens? For this potential, first of all, so all the three we have covered. If energy is greater than 0 here, you get unbounded orbit. Energy must be greater than 0 here, you get unbounded orbit. Energy less than 0 and inside this minimum, you get that wiggly motion. Here, since the curve goes to infinity all the way, only bounded orbits. What do you get here? You get, if energy is, suppose energy has a value which is equal to this. Now, with this energy what will happen? If the particle was here and it is pushed towards the origin, then it will come to this point, and remember here now is the turning point. So, this is your turning point. So, particle turns here and what does it do? It goes all the way to the infinity. This is an unbounded orbit, but remember for this same energy E, even though this region here is classically forbidden, particle cannot go there, which means if you start the motion to the right hand side of the hump, on this side the motion remains unbounded. What happens on this side? On this side what it says is that your motion cannot go beyond this turning point. The orbit has a largest radius. So, if you start motion from here, what would happen? Particle starts spiraling inwards, okay? And remember there is no inside turning point, it is going towards the center of the force and eventually crash into the center of the force, and that is when you get a orbit like that. That is when you get a orbit like, sorry, you get a orbit like this. This orbit has started from the turning point, and remember from this point onwards it will keep on spiraling inside, and as it is spiraling inside, remember its angular speed is increasing as r is decreasing, and eventually the spiral will go and crash into the center of the force. So, these are the kind of bounded orbits you can get, okay? And unbounded orbits, of course, again if you have a situation like this, we know wherever you start your motion from, the motion is, it will come closer to the center of the force up to the turning point r1 and then goes back to infinity, and then there are no other variations here. So, the particle comes, the trajectories would look like this. You have a center of force at origin, particle starts somewhere there and then it will go all the way to the infinity. You could of course start the motion here and push the particle away from the center, in that case it will simply go towards the infinity. And then there is a possibility like how much theta variation happens depends on the nature of the force. So, for a Kepler system for example, or 1 over r square force law, that is actually hyperbola if E is greater than 0. This is the result we will show in our next lecture, and for E is equal to 0, this actually turns out to be a parabola. So, these are the kind of orbits that we could get. Basically, the classification of the orbits will be in two broad categories called as bounded orbits and unbounded orbits. And then of course, there is a question of which of these orbits are closed, especially for bounded orbits, and which are not, which is what we will actually do in the next class. In the next class, we would actually bypass the question of time variation. I just want to find out equation of the orbit. So, orbit of course, here or a trajectory is just a curve. So, basically I need r in terms of theta. I do not need r in terms of time, theta in terms of time, but I need r in terms of theta. That gives me the trajectory. I still need time variation to decide where the particle was at particular instant and how it is moving along the trajectory, but finding the trajectory is basically finding r in terms of theta. So, in the next class what we will do is try and find methods of determining the equation of the trajectory or equation of the curve along which the particle would travel. Okay. So, see you in the next class.